Congratulations, everyone. Excellent. So we can see Kevin's office. Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's session on the European Research Council grants. This is the second webinar in a series that EURAXESS worldwide has been organizing for our research community across the world. We had a first webinar a few weeks ago where we already introduced the European Research Council, the different grants that are available. And today we'll be going a step further. We've invited two experts that will share their advice and their tips with us on how to approach the application process, hopefully for a successful outcome. Now, before we start, my name is Susanne Renzo-Vaso. I'm regional representative for EURAXESS in ASEAN. I'm joining you from Singapore. We have a massive downpour here right now. I hope you can all hear me. And I am joined by two speakers. I'm very excited about this. First of all, we have Professor Christine Foyer. I hope I pronounced this correctly, Christine. Christine is a professor of plant sciences at Birmingham University in the UK. She is a highly accomplished researcher. I've just looked this up. She has over 400 high impact publications under her belt, and currently an H index of 96, which I think is amazing. And she has many accomplishments, among them, which I think is interesting for all of us today. She is chair of one of the ERC consolidator grant panels. So Christine will join us today to talk to us and to you about what an ERC proposal evaluator is looking for when she or he is looking through the applications. And from her experience, she will share with us some tips. And we're also joined by Professor Kevin Heng, who is a professor of astronomy and planetary science at the University of Bern in Switzerland. And he also has an appointment as honorary professor in the Department of Physics at the University of Warwick. He also, again, a highly accomplished individual, and he is joining us today to share his expertise as a recipient of an ERC consolidator grant, which he was awarded in 2017. So we will hear from Kevin how he approached the application procedure and what advice he can share with us. Now, before we start, I quickly want to just run through the ERC grants with you, just to give you a very quick reminder what it is that we're talking about. Now, the European Research Council grants provide long-term grants for individual researchers from all over the world. It does not matter where you are based. And they fund high-risk, high-gain, pioneering projects in any field of frontier research. Now, this high-risk, high-gain, I'm very sure that Christine and Kevin will pick up on that in their presentations to share with us what is meant by this and how you can tackle this. So the ERC's mission is to encourage the highest quality of research in Europe through competitive funding and to support investigator-driven frontier research across all fields. So you can see life sciences, physical sciences, social sciences, and humanities, of course, are included on the basis of scientific excellence. Researchers can apply for one of the different funding schemes, and it very much depends on how much experience you have already as a researcher, where you are currently in your research career and where you want to go. The ERC starting grants are targeted at early career top researchers with between 2 and 7 years of research experience since completion of their PhD, and the grant has a value of up to 1.5 million. And you see there's an additional 1 million, which I'll explain in a minute, but that is basically money that you would be eligible for if you're moving to the European research area from outside of Europe. The consolidator grants, which Kevin will talk about later, are targeting independent, excellent scientists that have between 7 and 12 years of research experience since they've completed their PhD, and the grant has a value of up to 2 million euros. And of course, the advanced grants with a value of up to 2.5 million for researchers that really are looking back at an excellent scientific track record and recognized achievements in the past 10 years of their research activities. And we also have the synergy grants. These are like mini consortia between 2 and 4 researchers and their research groups that are working together on a project for up to 6 years. This is the grant with the highest value, up to 10 million euros. And what is interesting there, one of the synergy grant members can also be based outside of Europe. As I mentioned already, there's additional incentives that make this an attractive opportunity, besides, of course, being the most prestigious funding scheme in Europe. This is really a sign of excellence. If you have this on your career, it will take your research career in a different direction, I think, and I'm sure we'll hear that from the panelists later on. There's additional money available for researchers that are moving from outside of Europe to their host in the European research area. There is also the opportunity to remain connected, of course, to your institution outside of Europe. This is very important. Lots of researchers have commitments to their home institution, and there is an opportunity to share time depending on which grant it is. This is at least 50% of your time you can also spend fulfilling obligations with your home institution. And I think, interestingly, team members can also be based outside of Europe. There's lots of information on these grants. As I said earlier, we've already had a presentation on the ins and outs. This can be found on the EURAXESS website, and I'll share that with you later on. But I want to stop sharing now, because I think what really is interesting is to hear from our 2 panelists today. And I think we'll be starting with Kevin. Kevin, maybe you can, if you enable your microphone, just share a little bit to introduce yourself, maybe what kind of research you're doing and what you have, what kind of research is funded with the Consolidator grant that you received.
Could you allow me to share screen, please?
Oh.
Thank you. I was struggling with all of these e-tools. So I believe you can hear me fine. I'll just do a brief introduction of my background, mostly so that you know where my opinions are coming from. So I'm originally from Singapore a long time ago. I left in the early 2000s and did my training mostly in the US at Colorado and Princeton. I then did the rest of my training in Switzerland in various places and eventually ended up as a professor at the University of Bern. I have a secondary appointment at the University of Warwick. My main training is as a theoretical astrophysicist, although I sit in the planetary science department. These are 2 rather different fields. And recently, inspired by COVID, I guess, I have actually, even before COVID, I've been working with the epidemiologists. We started publishing papers. And so it's a very interesting field. And I run a group with 6 postdocs and 4 PhD students. So I would really like to have a conversation rather than just talk at you. So I have prepared 3 or 4 slides with talking points. And I'm hoping that this leads to questions and discussion. This is my aim of this. So the starting tips, at least from the point of view of an applicant like myself, is I would say start with the ideas and not the techniques or the methods. Lead with the ideas. And when I say ideas, I don't mean just projects. I mean, you have to think a bit bigger. Think of research themes. And when I say that, I mean, and I will show you an example of my own application. A research theme may consist of multiple projects. Projects might just end up in 1 or 2 papers, but a theme may persist for decades. The other thing that you should remember is that you are taking a step up from supporting yourself as an individual scientist to starting your own research group, maybe for the first time in your career. So just remember that you're asking for funding to support an entire group and not just you as a scientist. I found this particularly challenging when I first applied for the ERC. And so this requires some thought. And part of the thought process is that your group members are not just chess pieces. It's not the process where you lay out a plan and you split the plan up into pieces and you assign each piece to each group member. You should think a bit further than that. You should think about how will your proposed work establish them as experts. So once your PhD student finishes the work, how is he or she going to be recognized as an expert in some area of the field? The other thing that I'm sure Professor Foyer will talk a lot about is risk. In these proposals, you're often asked to assess the risk of the proposed research and how you mitigate these risks. And I would say risk is a matter of perception, and I'll say more on the next slide. So these are the starting tips. And here are my tips for proposal writing. There's no right answer. This is my own personal bias going through the process 4 times. And there's, as you have probably already heard in your previous webinar or you have read online, there are 2 parts to the proposal. Part B1 is 5 pages and part B2 is 15 pages. In the first round of review, part B2 doesn't even get read, as far as I understand. It's part B1 that gets read. And there are many ways to do this, and there's no right answer. And I've heard different opinions from ERC experts in my university. But my opinion is that you should write part B1 first. You should start with the vision. What is your vision for the next 5 years for this research group? And not get so bogged down in all of the details, right? So start with the vision. What's the scientific vision? And think of part B2 as the technical manual to execute that vision. And part of the vision requires you to think about research questions. You should not lead with the technique, you should lead with the research questions. And perhaps one rule of thumb, again, there's no right or wrong answer, is to frame your vision as 2 or 3 major scientific research questions. And I would say it's fine to not know all of the details to accomplish all of the different steps in the research at the present time. It's more important that you have a conceptual idea of the different steps that you need to take to accomplish the research and answer the questions. And more importantly, what the outcome actually means. So as a group leader, if you advance to that stage of your career, as a group leader, you're very often asked to make a judgment on what is important and what is not, and this is part of the process. The third point I have sort of already said in the previous slide, which is that try to visualize how your student or postdoc will be established as an expert by themselves upon accomplishing the research and not just a poor copy of you. The fourth is my bias as someone from Asia and trained in America is I get the impression that Europeans really love work packages. So they, in these proposals, you should structure it as perhaps research themes, and then each theme has different work packages. And one advantage of structuring the proposed research in these segments, in these work packages, is that it's very clear who is doing which part of the work. And if one of these packages is weaker than the rest, it allows the criticism to be isolated, to be compartmentalized. Your proposed research, Suzanne already mentioned, as being high risk. You should propose research that, of course, is perceived as high risk, high reward. But again, there's no right answer. But my perception of this is that it should be medium risk, high reward for you. meaning that you or your group members have some competitive advantage in your skill set or in your lab or something that allows you to tackle this problem with reduced risk compared to other groups. One thing I should also say, Professor Foyer probably has a different take on this, is because risk mitigation I find is particularly difficult for someone like a theoretician like me. If a piece of equipment breaks or an experiment is delayed, you could propose solutions for that. But I cannot really tell you what to do if my equations don't work out, or my computer simulations are not working as they do. So it's a slightly tougher question for a theoretician, and we can talk about that. So this is my to make things less abstract. I decided at Suzanne's suggestion to take my own proposal as a case study. I should tell you with the caveat that I tried 4 times and failed the first 3 times. The main reason was my 3 attempts for the ERC starting grant. In retrospect, the proposals were just not that good. And probably the related reason is that I had a very unconventional career in which I did a PhD in astrophysics, but I ended up becoming a professor in a rather different area of astrophysics than the one I got my PhD for. So in the end, when I wrote these proposals in 2010, 11, 12, in retrospect, they just were not good enough. The ideas were not mature enough. And finally, in 2017, on the 4th try, I received the ERC Consolidated Grant. So this is the first page of my proposal. This is part B1, the 5-page proposal. And I'm going to practice what I preach. I'm going to show you the format that I told you should perhaps follow. So the vision is to develop a holistic framework for understanding if rocky exoplanets around the most common stars in the galaxy are capable of hosting atmospheres, and by extension, biology. That was the vision. And this is split into 3 themes. The first theme is I would like to construct a virtual climate laboratory. I would like to study something called geochemical cycles, and I would like to understand the stability of the climate and biosignatures. And these themes were each split into 2 work packages for a total of 6 work packages tackled by 3 postdocs. And the implications of this is that the work is that it would greatly impact the scientific yield of upcoming space telescopes and provide abiotic explanations for what we may see. So not everything you see, well, if you want to claim something to be life in the universe, you need extraordinary proof. So we are trying to provide a counterpoint to that. So that's my proposal. I believe this is the last slide I have. I think Professor Foyer is in a much better position than I am to comment on this. I've done some review work in my career, but not at her level. But this is my take on if I try and, I often find that it helps when you're writing a proposal to try and put yourself on the other side and see what, and try to visualize what the other person is thinking. And the first thing I would say, which I don't think Professor Foyer would disagree with, is that each reviewer, whether you're on the panel or you're an external reviewer, is often very busy. In addition to a busy career and a busy schedule, each reviewer for that grant competition has to read dozens, if not hundreds of proposals. So you often don't have a lot of time, and you would like to use very crisp, concise language to capture their attention. The majority of the reviewers on the panel are probably not experts on your topic. And one term I heard from a ERC expert on a panel I attended when I was an applicant was she used the word semi-expert, which I thought was interesting. So I'm going to use that word too. So a semi-expert is someone who is obviously very intelligent, but not an expert at the intricate details of your research. So when you have to persuade these semi-experts to vote for you. So if there are 10 panelists on the panel, the chances are there's one of them who's a real expert on what you are doing, if at all, and the other 9 are semi-experts. So you should assume intelligence and not knowledge, These are highly intelligent people, but they don't read your literature. If you assume the opposite is a disaster. So if you insult their intelligence and assume their knowledge, that's a disaster. Research papers often benefit from a passive third-person voice. For example, you would use a sentence like, it was demonstrated in the previous study that X is true. You place some distance between the statement and yourself, even if you are the one who did that work, so that it sounds modest and neutral. For proposals, because of the first reason, and also the second reason, you're speaking to someone. You're speaking to someone and trying to convince this person to give you the funding. So it's more convincing if you use an active first-person voice. You can say something like, in the previous study, I demonstrated that X is true, or we demonstrated that X is true, if you're not comfortable with I. Use short, concise, clear sentences. And the thing I always tell my students is, if you can say something in 5 words instead of 10, use 3. So be really concise, don't waste your words. I would say avoid boastful or confrontational language, because this is an invitation for reviewers, both on the panel and both external experts, to challenge you, and you don't want doubt to be cast on your application. And finally, I would ask you, did you provide a fair and balanced view of the published literature without too much criticism, avoiding negative language? Because you should remember that some of these reviewers, especially the external ones, may well be your competitors. So you should paint the research in a neutral, friendly light, even if you disagree with some of the literature. Okay, this is actually my last slide. So this is the visual of my project. I was often given the advice that you should put in a schematic so that if a reviewer, I don't know, runs out of energy or is simply too tired to read all of the details of your proposal, they can at least stare at this schematic and get a big picture idea of what you are doing. So this is my big picture idea of my project with the 3 research themes and the research questions that surround it. And this is all I have to say, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kevin. We have one question that's come in already, but I'm sure others will follow. There's a person who's asking you, as a theoretician, how do you propose to collaborate with scientists performing experiments without sounding that you are dependent on such collaborations?
It's a great question. Am I muted? No, I'm okay.
You're okay.
So that's a great question. And in fact, it's a question that affects me directly, because I'm a theoretician who works closely with experimentalists to interpret their data. I guess the way that I can only answer it from my point of view, I guess the way I handled it is to show that the work I'm proposing will proceed regardless of whether I collaborate with experimentalists, but it's much better, the work will be much more enhanced if I include them in my thought process. So meaning the proposed work itself stands on its own. It has no dependence on the experimentalists, but of course it's better if you list experimentalists as collaborators. Is that a fair answer? You can ask me more if you like.
We'll wait until the person maybe types another question, but we have a question from Tong Lee. Tong Lee picks up, of course, on what you said. You've applied, I think, 3 times and you were not successful, and then you were successful the 4th time. So just wondering, if you look back, what do you think were the main reasons why you failed, or what did you do differently when you applied for the Consolidator grant?
I did all of the things that I tried to put on the slides. I tried to do them better every single time. And in between 2010 and 2017, I also served on lots of review panels. I served on the Swiss review panels, the German review panels, NASA review panels. I served on lots of NASA review panels. And when you're sitting on the other side of the table, you have an intellectual empathy for, you get a different perspective on these proposals. And you start to realize, maybe I should do this differently, or maybe I should do that differently. So I tried to condense all of that experience into the slides I just show you. And if any point that doesn't make sense, I can elaborate on them. And also, I already mentioned I had an unconventional career track, which most people here probably do not have. When I applied in 2010, I was absolutely not ready. I had the perspective of a junior postdoc who was only fending for himself. And I didn't have the perspective of a group leader who was looking after a group of students and postdocs. I absolutely did not have that perspective till around 2015 or so. So it's no surprise that 2010, 11, and 12 proposals failed.
I see. So basically, you would also say that as an applicant, one needs to reflect where the person is in their career and whether it fits. So it just needs to be the right timing as well, I guess.
Can I say a little bit on that? I would say it's more that I don't think it's the position you're holding at the point in your career. I think it's your mentality. So you could be a very mature postdoc who's already thinking these thoughts. I just wasn't that person. And you have to really think about how to take care of a group of people and how to make them into experts.
So there's a question here from Young Miao. She is saying, if there are 3 months for preparation, how would you allocate your time and energy in the timeline? And also if you have tips on how to best, I guess, present your experiences in kind of the template that's available. So basically, if you have 3 months to do this, where would you put the emphasis for the applicant?
So this is in the chat, right?
Yes, yeah.
3 months is, again, there's no right answer. 3 months is pretty tight. It's just at the edge for me. I mean, just to give you a sense, I and 3 PIs are applying for the Synergy grant in 2022, and we already assembled. So 3 months, sure, you have to work night and day on it. And I don't think there's much storytelling in the CV, is my impression. Professor Foyer can say more when she has the floor. How would I allocate my time and energy? I think I've said that in the slides. I think you need a convincing narrative, you need a vision, and you need to split that vision into research themes. And I'm happy if this person writes to me and a personalized email if these answers are too generic.
Oh, good. Well, maybe before we hand over to Professor Christine, there's a question here, this I think comes up a lot, is regarding the host institution. So the question here specifically is, were you already at the institution where you're currently carrying out the ERC grant, or did you have to move to a different institution for this?
I was actually already at my institution. So I was in a relatively comfortable position, but I would say just write the director of the institute an email, introduce yourself, say what you propose, what you would like to do. And I'm sure Professor Foy would agree with me that this elevator pitch approach in academia is very useful. Imagine you're in an elevator with this director of this institute and you have 20 seconds to make your point. So do that in the email. Right? So in 20 seconds, in one paragraph, say what the idea is and try and entice them to support you. I can answer the other questions very quickly. Switching topics, I don't have much to say beyond what I've said. Then the last question is contact details. We can do that later. How many papers between 2010 and 2017? About 70, I think, I published.
Good. Well, we'll come back to the questions. I think what we do now is we give Professor Foyer the floor so she can share with us her advice from the perspective of a grant evaluator. And then I think we'll open up the floor and we can come back to some of the questions that you've already asked, because I think Professor Foyer can give her answer from a different perspective, which I think will be interesting for all of us. So Professor Foyer, I will make you the oops. Oh. Sorry, I can't make you. Oh, why can I not make a presenter? Oh, my dear.
If you can't do it, do you have my presentation there? I sent it.
Yes, I do.
Maybe we can just go through it side by side and you show it.
Yeah. Oh my. Kevin, you're the host right now, and I cannot get my host rights back from you.
Kevin can pass to me, maybe as host.
Yes, exactly, Kevin. You have to do it exactly. It's perfect. Whew.
Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you see that, everybody?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay. Just need, that's it. I'll just move this. Okay. That's the second slide, actually. I need to go back. Hold on, that isn't right. How did that happen? I'll do it again. Hold on. Let me see if I can, that's possibly better. Okay. No, it still wants to go to the back. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Sorry about that. I hope everybody can see.
Perfect.
So I am Christine Foyer. I'm currently chair of the LS9 grants panel. I have previously sat for several rounds on the advanced grants panel. And I've also been involved in reviewing finished advanced grants. So I know quite a bit about the types of grants we get. I am a plant biochemist and molecular physiologist, and my main interest is redox biology. So I'm interested in how reactive oxygen species and similar molecules are involved in controlling the growth and stress tolerance of crop plants with a view to producing crops for the future. In LS9, we get a wide range of proposals on biotechnology. So they span from basic molecular and biochemical and biophysical properties of all types of cells, plants, animals, microorganisms, through to applications, preparation of new techniques that are almost going towards industry. And sometimes we get industry that are already directly involved. So we span a wide range of different topics. And that can make actually judging the proposals sometimes quite difficult. And everything that Kevin said really matters about clarity. And I will come back to that. So if anybody wants to look me up, there's my webpage. Like Kevin, I'm involved in a wide variety of activities, and I do chair other panels. I'm particularly involved in Belgian grant awarding panels, but you'll see some of the other activities that I have there. Okay, for us, as a panel, we have to judge a wide range of very different proposals. And the ERC tells you from the start that we are looking for excellence. So in everything you write, it's excellence, excellence, excellence. The excellence of the proposal, the excellence of the candidate. And sometimes our applicants forget that they have to describe their own excellence as well as the excellence of the research. And occasionally we get proposals that actually aren't complete as much as we would like them, in that all aspects are not described, particularly in part B1. 50% of the mark is for the candidate, 50% of the mark is for the proposal. So we have to see the excellence of the candidate, and we have to see the excellence of the proposal right from the start. So if you write anything down today on your paper, write excellence, because that's what all panels are looking for and what ERC panels are looking for. So the next point is the high risk, high nature of the proposal. That has to be blindingly obvious. Now, as Kevin said, we are often a panel of about 25 people. Most of us not experts in the area of the proposal, particularly when we get such a wide range of proposals. At step B1, 6 people on the panel will read that proposal, and maybe not one of them will be an expert. So you have to explain really carefully how important what you are doing is within the context of the field of the whole. Now, in the paperwork we have to complete before we meet as a panel, the first question that is asked on the paperwork is, describe the high risk, high gain nature of the proposal. So that's the very first question we're asked on the paperwork. Now, Kevin was talking about high risk. We don't need risks to be mitigated, actually. We don't mind part of the proposal being completely risky if it's going in a really new, exciting area. You know, if Kevin and his equations fail, it doesn't matter, but the chance that they will work and revolutionize the field is what we are looking for. So we weigh up risk against gain. We don't want the whole proposal to fail, but having risky aspects of it is really quite important, because that's where the excellence lies, in moving the frontiers forward. We don't particularly want safe science. We really want, you know, groundbreaking science, but the proposal has to be written so the non-specialists can actually see that, and you have to describe it. So, within the context of your proposal, the next point, the concepts and hypotheses should be original to a degree and not simply an extension of what you've done before. They can be totally based on your expertise, but we have to see that you are moving in a new direction, you are taking on a new discipline. For example, that you could be incorporating artificial intelligence into biology. We have to see that there is some groundbreaking nature to the work that you're doing. Now, in my particular panel, that can lie not only in the science, but in method development or cross-disciplinarity. So if you have a field where you can see, for example, that bringing AI in might revolutionize the field, and you wish to develop that method for your area of research, we will happily take that as part of the proposal. And also cross-disciplinarity, if you are not in a field of AI, but you want to move into it from your area of research, if that is groundbreaking and it's feasible, we are happy to look at that. It's not necessarily the whole proposal. We like some of the aspects to be certain, but some of it should really be challenging and should be risky. But as I say, they're not essential components, but they always help and they're useful, that we can see that there are various aspects where the proposal could be groundbreaking. So unlike many other proposals, the next point is that background data isn't required. So it doesn't bother us if we don't see any foundation data. A lot of grant agencies will want to see that you've got some foundation data which you base the proposal on. I mean, if you have some, yeah, you're welcome to include it, but it's not necessary, particularly if you're moving into something that's really exciting. As long as the panel can judge that the proposal is feasible, that it's doable, then you're okay. That's the high risk nature of it. But as well, we need to see that what you're proposing is to some extent based on your skills and knowledge. So not all of it, but some of it. We need to be convinced that you actually can do it. Okay, the next point is really important. Equal attention has to be paid to both parts of the proposal when you're writing it. Part B1 is evaluated first. It's not evaluated by any outside experts. It's just the people on the panel. 6 people or so from the panel will look at part B1, and it's critical that all the above points are really explained so that non-specialist reader can understand that. If we don't have anybody on the panel who really does know something about the topic, we will ask other panels if they have somebody who can just step in and help us. But normally we don't do that. We have a lot of proposals to evaluate in the first round. So it's got to be absolutely clear what you want to do, how it's groundbreaking, and the excellence is there. If you don't get past part B1, then you are never going to get part B2 read. So it really is important that you pay a lot of attention to part B1. So part B1 should be accessible to the non-specialist. The whole panel has to be able to judge the nature of the concepts, methods, etc. So it has to be crystal clear. And believe me, we argue the pros and cons of every single proposal because it's critical we get it right. Now, I've talked about the science above, but the last point is really, really important, that you pay attention to what you write about yourselves, because we need to see the excellence and creativity and independence of the applicant. So you have to write that part really well. We are not just looking at papers, because papers, of course, are important. We need to see whether you're the first or the last author. We need to see whether you've actually been involved in activities outside the lab. Are you involved in societies? Are you directing PhD students? Are you really taking part in science in a broader sense? So anything that you can write there which establishes that you are an independent and creative applicant, these are your ideas and not the ideas from your host lab, that's absolutely fine. And I will just say here that, for example, in Kevin's case, Kevin has a consolidator grant. We fully expect that in the fullness of time, he will apply for an advanced grant. Because once you establish excellence within the ERC, you can move from starting to consolidate to advanced grants, as long as the science is excellent and you convince us of your own independence and excellence. Okay, so finally, my tips. And I think it's just to reiterate what I've said before. Make sure when you write the proposal that the excellence and innovation are obvious. Right at the start, put it right at the beginning. You know, tell us right at the start why this science is important. Establish what the field is like and how you are going to improve on it. And that has to be accessible to a non-specialist reader. Certainly use diagrams, particularly to illustrate workflow as well as concepts and any foundation data. Sometimes concepts can be very, very tricky, so it's good to have a diagram. I can see a raised hand. Does somebody want to ask a question now, or should we leave it?
I think we do it at the end. Okay,
right. I'm nearly finished. So sometimes we certainly have parts of a project that are related to industry and that will lead to patents. So if that is correct, you need to describe that clearly. Where is this work going? Is it just publications? Are you looking further, and how do you plan to take that to industry or to other extensions? The next point is really important. The proposal should rely largely on the applicant. It's your proposal. It isn't a collaborative proposal. If you are relying heavily on collaborators, you need to go for synergy. It isn't a grant. You can certainly have some people who you are integrating with, but part of the work in the proposal should not rely on work done by collaborators, because then that's a different type of grant. If you are learning the technology and bringing it into your lab, that is absolutely fine. But you shouldn't rely on a work package that is done solely by collaborators. That really isn't what we're looking for. So be careful to state the high risk nature of the proposal. We love risk, actually. We actually do love it, as long as it's groundbreaking. Make sure that you're going to revolutionize the field in whatever way, as long as you describe it, you know, then we don't have to work it out for ourselves. And the high risk has to be offset by the gain. So if you are really going to make a groundbreaking discovery, or potentially, as I say, you know, all risks are not without problem, and we don't mind if part of the proposal doesn't work. That's fine. At least you've tried to advance the field. And then coming to the methodology, as Kevin said, we do like work packages. We need to be sure of the approaches and methods, and they have to be described really clearly, you know, and you need to have some original technologies, I think, in there, as well as tried and tested technologies. So try and have a mixture of both. And the last part's really important too, because if you get to part B2 and your budget is not correct, then it can cause us real problems. If you want to ask for extra funding, then make sure it's fully justified. There was a question to Kevin about moving from outside Europe, I think, to a lab in Europe. Most labs in Europe will jump at the chance to take you. And then you can ask for extra funding to establish your lab. And that can apply in Europe too. If you want to move to a new institution, you can ask for that extra funding and it's justified. What you can't do is ask for that extra funding for consumables. That causes a crisis in the panel. That's not allowed. And if we think that those consumables are central to the project and we can't allow them, then you put the whole project in jeopardy. Okay, I think I will finish there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Foyer. That was excellent. We do have quite a few questions. Maybe we stick to one of the recurring questions that we get a lot, given that the participants today joining us from outside of Europe, at least the majority of them. So a key question for them is always, how do they identify a host? How should they go about establishing contact with an institution in Europe? Do you have any advice there?
Literally, you need to find the lab where you will be best situated. I must say that we never evaluate the lab. Okay, so we never ever consider the host institution. We assume that the candidate and the money we are giving is sufficient to establish the lab wherever that the applicant wants to go. So you mustn't think that the host institution matters in terms of the judgment of the panel, but you should look for the environment you want to be in. You know, the country you want to be in, the institution you want to be in, and then you need to write directly to the head of the team, if not the director, probably not the director of the institute, but the head of the team or the department in which you want to work. So you need to do a bit of background work. But as I say, as long as you are a good candidate, most people in Europe will accept your application, will support your application, will probably help you write the application. But it's really deciding where you want to be, where you will be comfortable working, and then approaching the people directly. but with ideas for the proposal already. I would suggest that you have a half-written proposal and send it to the host institution. Say, this is what I'm going to propose, and I would like to do it in your university or your institution.
Thank you. And I think that's key. There's a lot of support available from the institutions themselves, but also from the national contact points. And I'll share the details with everyone later on where you can get support for that. And I think also this is important to mention the grant is portable. If you do realize this may not be the correct institution, you can take it and move elsewhere. So there's some questions specifically for you. In your experience, have you evaluated purely theoretical proposals? And is the collaboration issue particularly critical?
In my panel, we have nothing that's purely theoretical. There is a mixture of practical and theoretical, but we don't have purely theoretical proposals. So I really can't comment on how other panels might judge those. But I think the basic principle applies, that the idea and the skills have to be based in the applicant. You can discuss and bring in other technologies that you will learn, but you can't depend on the other partner to do the work. You have to bring that skill into your lab.
Thank you. And I think here's a question for both of you, because you've all been emphasizing that this is really about excellence. You're supposed to really do something that pushes the boundaries of your discipline or of science. There's a question that comes up a lot, which is how do you assess whether your proposal is competitive or not? And I think this would be for both of you, Christine and Kevin. What maybe Kevin, if you start first, how did you know that you were on the right track with your proposal?
This is impossible to answer in a generic sense. You have to be immersed in that research area. You have to know the experts in that area. You have to go to conferences, and then it comes with experience. And after a while, you know what the major questions are people are interested in and why they are important and so on. I guess my knee-jerk answer is that hopefully you are surrounded by mentors or senior colleagues who can give you advice on that. I don't know what Professor Foyer's take is on this.
I mean, I think if you know the literature, if you network with colleagues, you know where the field is. You have to understand the state of the field that you are in. And you then have to understand what would make a breakthrough. Where would the breakthrough come? So that's where we look for the creativity of the applicant, is understanding the state of the art of the field, which they describe in their proposal. So state the state of the art and then how it's going to be revolutionized. You have to know that. If you don't know it as an applicant, you're not ready.
Can I reiterate, can I just support what Professor Foyer said about the literature? I find that to be really, really important. I think this is one of the most important skills I picked up as an academic, is to really read the literature and understand what people are doing and all the ins and outs, to be totally immersed in it.
Thank you. I think basically, to summarize it, you also have to maybe critically reflect a little bit on yourself. I guess you as the applicant, you know best, where you are in your field. And if you compare yourselves with your peers, how original your ideas are or not. And it's difficult, I guess, for an outsider to answer that question. I wanted to ask you a question, Kevin, because you've applied so many times and you weren't successful. What made you stick to it? Why is the ERC grant so important to you that you just decided to try again?
Well, several reasons. I mean, academia is about ideas and innovation, and I didn't want to stand still, right? So you always want to get better and aim higher. That's the generic reason. The more concrete reason is that I had some risky ideas I wanted to pursue that would really make a difference if I got, and the risky part of my proposal was well, I don't know how much I should get into specifics. I came to realize that I needed geochemistry to understand exoplanets. And I am no geochemist. And so I had to teach myself some basics, talk to my geochemist colleagues, and try and read the literature and then construct a plausible component of that proposal. So that was the risk. So 1/3 of my proposal was based on expertise I did not already have. And that was very risky. And the other risk was that when I eventually hired this person, this postdoc to lead this part, I had to hire someone who has both astrophysics and geochemistry training. I was very happy. I was very lucky to find this person now in my group, but that was the risk in my proposal.
Thank you so much. So we've got a couple more very specific questions. Let me just read out this one here. I think this is a person who is applying and has already applied, but he's here as anonymous, so I can't give you his name or her name. The person is asking both of you, if a research proposal focusing on obtaining a specific product or formula or processing method, which is high potency for patent rights, will it be more favorable to the reviewer than the other proposal investigating on the dynamic pattern, behavior, or characteristics of a particular object? I hope that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, for my panel, we do like product development, but we also like to see there is some advance in biology that comes with it. So it's really important that you get the balance there. We're not there to really just fund technology transfer, if you like. We really like to see some groundbreaking research that comes with the patenting and leads to the patenting.
Thank you so much. There's a question here, which again is very relevant for researchers in Southeast Asia, where also maybe the academic setting is a little bit different from Europe. So this person is worried if they do spend their time preparing a grant proposal to go to Europe, how this will affect their situation here at the home institution. Does the home institution, the current one, get any credit in the ERC proposal?
We don't. We never consider institutions. None of them. Everybody is equal in terms of their institution, so we never comment and they get no credit. But what can happen is that you can spend up to 50% of your time in another institution. Yeah. So you could have 50% of your work based in Europe with the funding in Europe, but you could spend a substantial amount of time at your other home institution as well. So yeah, there is that credit with it.
Exactly. I think the other questions are very, very specific, and I think I'd just leave this to an email conversation maybe later on. I think we've pretty much covered everything. Let me just check quickly here the chat function. No. Do you have any final comments maybe for you as a successful grantee and as an evaluator, people that are now looking at this information and they are still hesitant maybe? Is there some final words of encouragement maybe from you? Kevin, what would your final words of wisdom be?
I would say when I was making these 3 unsuccessful applications in 2010, 11, and 12, at the time I was fairly frustrated. I thought, oh, this is such a waste of my time. It takes like 6 months to prepare for one. And actually, in retrospect, looking back, I would say that the very act of preparing for these proposals contributed to my intellectual growth. It forced me to think as a group leader and to visualize research themes that were just not confined to me. And so I thought the process itself was very useful. Of course, it would have been nice to succeed. And in the end, I did after 4 tries and 7 years. But I would say the very process of writing the grant and visualizing it is very useful for you as an academic. Don't think of it as a waste of time.
Thank you so much. And Professor Foyer, what would be your final advice?
In my own experience, it takes almost as long to write a grant for a small amount of money as it does for a large amount of money. I think that these grants are very worthwhile because it will give you a degree of independence that you would never otherwise get. It's amazing how these grants give kudos to the individual, they give kudos to the institution as well. So if you are a recipient, you are extremely well regarded in your organization, and it is likely to really boost your career prospects. So it's worth it.
Thank you very much. And I think that really sums it up. These are really highly prestigious grants, and they set you on a different career track, which otherwise I think you probably wouldn't be on. And we hope that more researchers that are based in Southeast Asia, or in fact anywhere in the world, are applying for these grants. I think sometimes you just have to do it. As Kevin said, you just have to also reflect on yourself. Where are you in your career? Do you have what it takes? Is this the right time? But then you also just have to start and put it out there, and hopefully a successful result will come back. I will share with you all the presentation slides of Professor Foyer and Professor Heng afterwards. So you will have all what has been presented. You will also have their contact details, and I will get back to some of you via email on the very specific questions that you have asked, so you will all get a response. I want to just briefly share the screen. No, I can't because I'm not the panelist. Maybe Christine, if you could make me the host again, then I can just say a few words.
Now, I'm not sure how to do this. You know where it is? Where was it, Kevin? On the...
You have to move your cursor over your name to the right, and then I think there's a button that says more, and that allows you to...
more, but I can't see... yeah.
If you click on the more, I believe that should allow you to change host.
It doesn't say it on there.
Don't worry about it. It's all fine. Basically, I will share with all of you also a little bit of information later on.
Oh, wait a minute. I found it maybe. Hold on. Let me see if I can do it.
Oops.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good. I'll do it via email. I just wanted to wrap up and tell you, EURAXESS is based in Southeast Asia. I am in Singapore, and I'm your main contact point. When you do have any specific questions that you think I can help you with regarding the ERC grants, or even reaching out to institutions in Europe that you're interested in exploring whether they might host you or not, you can contact me, and I will share my contact details, and also, of course, information on EURAXESS where you can, I'm the host again now, where you can but don't worry, it's all fine. So I think it's 4 minutes past 5 o'clock here, and I think it's 10 o'clock in where you are in Europe. So this is a good time for you to start your day, and a good time for all of us here in Asia to end the day and reflect on this. I think there was an excellent webinar. We will, again, we'll put it out on our social media channels so you can look at it again at your own leisure. And please do contact us for specific questions. And I just like to thank both of you. Thank you so much. As very, very busy, excellent researchers for taking the time and sharing your knowledge with us. And I'll hope we'll be welcoming you again soon. Maybe in person in Singapore once this whole thing is done.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.